Hi, Doug Andrew again. In this IUL Insiders series, hopefully you're getting a lot of epiphanies, aha moments. In this particular episode, I'm going to help you be able to address a common question you will get from many, many people, prospects. How come my advisor didn't tell me about this? I wish I had a nickel for every time I've been asked that question. I'm going to give you the 10 primary reasons in doing this for over 46 years why everybody isn't doing this. You wouldn't believe how many times in an audience I will teach something and they get these aha moments and then they'll say, golly, this sounds too good to be true. Why isn't everybody doing this? And so I tell them some of the major reasons why, because I want to tell you a story, and it relates to when I published my first book, Misfortune. And so, as you know, I've written 11 books thus far, and my very first book, I call the War and Peace version. It's called Misfortune, and it's because of the money myth conceptions. People don't know what they don't know, and we miss out on fortunes because of that. And I self-published it. You probably read or heard the story. And I started going through 5,000 copies a month, but I thought my first book had to tell it all. So I had a section about real estate optimization, another one about retirement planning and why IRAs and 401ks are not necessarily the best way to go. And then I talked about max-funded insurance contracts and how it is the dream solution for so many goals, but particularly retirement. And then I had a few chapters that talk about the big picture, that it's not just about money. Well, there were 23 chapters, there were 23 myths, and then I had a truth. And so here's the myth, here's the reality, and here's the strategy to overcome that myth. And so as I wrote this book and self-published it, it picked up traction. And so I shared this with my coach, Dan Sullivan, and another coach, Lee Brower. And they said, wow, you need to meet Marshall Thurber. Well, I didn't know who that was, but I explained in some of my other training. He's an incredible guy who passed the California State Bar exam back in the 1970s with the highest score ever up until that point. And he never took 1 hour of law school, nor read one law book. He learned from Dr. Edwards Deming and Dr. Buckminster Fuller how to be able, he had a photographic memory, but he learned about predictability and systems, and he learned how to pass exams with that photographic memory. He helped his roommate in one weekend create 16 mind maps from law school. And he helped his roommate create those, and he says, I could even pass the bar exam. And his roommate said, go try it. So he did. And he passed it with the highest score ever. In fact, he mentored other lawyers when they were trying to pass the bar exam. In fact, he went out and practiced law and won 56 consecutive lawsuits until he got tired of getting guilty people off the hook, because he knew how to create predictability, which is what Dr. Edwards Deming would teach. He's the total quality management engineer that transformed Japan and Korea to the quality they put out today with electronics and automobiles compared to when I was a kid. Anything made in Japan was junk or cheap. That's all because Dr. Deming went over there and said, you've got to create predictable quality. Now, the point of this is Marshall Thurber reads a book a day. He read my 550-page War and Peace book in 1 hour. And he goes, you need to talk to Pat Burns. Who's that? Well, she's the facilitator for the Millionaire Summit every year. And that's where they take people who are millionaires, self-made millionaires, and they bring them together in a think tank. And everybody gets in this hot seat, sort of like the Genius Network that I belong to. And when it's your time, you stand up and say, golly, if I could just figure out how to, and then you say what you want to do, I could turn this world right side up. And then everybody in the room says, oh, you ought to meet so-and-so. You ought to talk to so-and-so. And this is where I've said that. And within 5 minutes, I was talking to people like Arianna Huffington of the Huffington Post. I was talking to people like Richard Branson, Necker Island. It's amazing how many times I've been offered the opportunity to talk to Warren Buffett, President Bush, because we're so many degrees away, and it's only about 6 degrees. So here I was talking to Dan Sullivan, Lee Brower. They referred me to Marshall Thurber. He says, you got to talk to Pat Burns. So I did. They invited me to the summit. And then the facilitators that year were Mark Victor Hansen. He's the co-author with Jack Canfield of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, the number one book series in the world. And so they were facilitating this, and Robert Allen. They're both friends now. But Robert Allen got in a horrible accident, and he was in a coma for several days, so they canceled this. Well, it was Pat Burns that called up. Mark Victor Hansen says, "Oh, you don't want to refund Doug his $10,000. You had to pay $10,000 to be in the room." And he says, "Okay, you need to spend a day with this guy." So I went down and I talked to Mark Victor Hansen. I mean, that has sold more books by triple what Og Mandino has sold. He said, "Whoa, you need to meet Jillian Manis." I go, "Who's that?" "Well, she's usually the literary agent for authors like Danielle Steele. She doesn't do financial books, but I'll put in a good word for you." Well, long story short, I met Jillian. She says, "Send me your manuscript." It went to her clerical people, and it was trashed. She gets like 17 book proposals a week. When I contacted her, she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Send it directly to my attention." Then she got the book, and she texted me on her BlueBerry and says, "I'm at JFK. I'm flying to London and Paris. I'll be back in about 5 days. I'm going to read your book and tell you what I think." Now, she does what she says she's going to do. 5 days later, to the hour, she texts and says, "Doug, I think we have a bestseller here. We're going to start at the top with Warner Business Books, and then we'll go to Simon Schuster, McGraw-Hill, and on down the list." We got in front of Warner Business Books, and I'm sitting in front of Mr. Rick Wolff. I'm a no-name author. Now, if you count what I just said, I was 6 degrees, 6 people away from the number one business book editor in the world. And he looks at that and he goes, "Wow, you're already going through 5,000 copies. Most authors come to me and expect us to sell their books. You're already going through 5,000 a month. Do you know that's bestseller status? We want that book, and I'm going to commission you to write another one." And then the one after that was $1 million advance. Now, you know what? I talk about in life, you have to be in motion and adding value in the world. That wasn't just chance. It's like a bee going out collecting nectar. The bee goes about collecting nectar, unbeknowingly cross-pollinating the botanicals. And new life erupts all around this bee. And the bee is oblivious to the fact that it had something to do with all this wonderful life and all these flowers. See, that's what a strategic byproduct is. Just get in motion in life. So that's what I did. So here I have Mr. Rick Wolff, and he looks at the book and he reads the manuscript. Do you know what he said? "Doug, I want you to write a book titled, 'Why Didn't My Advisor Tell Me About This?'" I said, "Yeah, I still haven't written that book." I'll never forget that. He said, "Doug, I've never heard of this before, and I have edited thousands of financial books. This is not what people know. Why didn't my advisor tell me about this?" I go, "Well, in my circles, it's very common. But you're right, most people simply don't know what they don't know. They're told this because that's the way the financial services industry leads them. Oh no, you put money in the market. Insurance is for death. Insurance isn't an investment. That's a poor rate of return." So he was blown away. That's why in my books, I began to give reasons why everybody isn't doing this or why your advisor didn't tell you about this. So my encouragement in this episode is to refer to chapter 11 of the book, and I want you to learn the answers based upon what's in here. I'm just going to highlight them, and then I want you to read and study the replies because you will be asked these questions. So when people ask, I still do seminars, webinars weekly, and I would say every single time, because we do live Q&A, I know what one of the top 5 questions is going to be. Golly, this sounds too good to be true. Why isn't everybody doing this? How come I haven't heard of this before? Why didn't my advisor tell me about this? It is so predictable, so I know the answers. They roll off my tongue. So when you study chapter 11, it starts on page 1 67, go through and begin to understand these basic answers. The first one that I give is simple lack of awareness. People just don't know what they don't know because you can't be aware of something you're not aware of, okay? The financial services industry, they don't want their advisors to know about this. They don't want to be sued if they bugger up Tefra, Defra, Tamra, or whatever. Or they don't make as much money. Most advisors make money by churning your money in the market. Here, the advisors are taught, oh, insurance, that's expensive. They make this big commission up front. No, myth. See, if you have an asset manager, they make 1% on whatever your assets are worth every single year, or 1.5% or 2%, the rest of your life. Let me just put that in a different perspective. That means if you were going to go buy a $500,000 house and you get this realtor and the realtor says, "Ooh, I will find a house for you." And the realtor commissions are going to be what? 6% between the buyer and the seller. And if that person does it all, then 6%. So 6% on $500,000 is what? $30,000. Now, most of us go, oh, that's fine. But what if the realtor said, now you can pay me 6%, 30 grand, or else I have an alternative. You can pay me 1% on the value of this house every year as it goes up in value for the rest of your life. What would you choose? I'd rather pay the one-time 6%, because if you paid 1% on a $500,000 asset, as it grows the rest of your life, in 30 years, you will have shelled out just under $1 million instead of $30,000. That's what the financial services industry does. Asset managers charge you 1%, whether they make you money or not. But as your account grows, they keep charging you 1% or more forever. And they have the audacity to say, oh, insurance is expensive. No, it's way less. And so we have software that illustrates the cost over the long haul. And so it's lack of awareness. A lot of these brokerage firms don't want their advisors to know about this because they won't make as much money in the long haul. The second reason, path of least resistance. A lot of times I may teach these concepts. I taught them to a major credit union. I won't say their name, they're huge. And they were so thrilled, they sent out invitations to all their high net worth customers, and we filled up this hotel ballroom with 400 people. And we had 108 couples that said, we want to do a laser fund. And I trained several of the people in their branches to do that. 90 days later, the credit union got in touch with me and said, we're ready to do another one. That was the best thing we ever did to bring people into our credit union. I said, hold on. How many people did you help implement a max-funded IUL? Guess how many? They said, oh, darn. That's too complicated, okay? We don't have that kind of time. So you got them into the credit union, and then, we just figured what they didn't know wouldn't hurt them. We didn't want to go through qualifying them with physical exams, and we'd have to wait 2, 3, 4 weeks to get compensated. We just wanted their name, their address, their social security number, and a check. Slam, bam, thank you, ma'am. Hurt them in, hurt them out. When they told me that, I said, I will never do a seminar for you again. This isn't about baiting people to come into your financial institution and then switching them over to an inferior product because all you need is their name, address, social security number, check, and you're done with them. They said, well, our advisors, they don't stay around. They don't stay with our credit union very long. We don't want to make long-term relationships here. And so, sometimes institutions, advisors, they just take the path of least resistance. How sad is that? Too much work. Sometimes it's just too much work to go through the process, underwriting, structuring it correctly, when if you sell them a mutual fund, you just write out a check. 4, selling clubs versus teaching the swing. We've talked about this. If you just sell a commodity, buy this gold, buy this silver, buy this mutual fund, instead of the swing, hey, let me teach you the strategy of indexing. Let me show you how this works and the flexibility. It takes hours to educate. But when people get educated, they feel empowered. But a lot of people, you know what they don't know won't hurt them. Yes, it does. The next reason is it's not as lucrative. Well, yeah, they want to make money forever. They want to make 1 or 2% on everything your money makes forever. On an insurance contract, I only get compensated on new money that goes in. I've never made one dime on the money that my clients are making inside that insurance contract. Okay? And so it's not as lucrative. They go, oh, yeah, I'd rather not do that. I'm trying to build this annuity for myself. Number 6, only so much insurance. Sometimes they're indoctrinated, oh, you should only have so much insurance. So much so that a lot of the people say, whoa, oh, wow, I want that one. Oh, but I don't need insurance. Well, so they think they have to pay for it on top. No, that's included, and then they want it. They want something they didn't know they wanted until they got educated. The 7th reason, isn't insurance too expensive? Okay, they're buying into, oh, the cost of insurance goes up as you get older. This thing's going to crash and burn when you get into your 60s and 70s. It's going to just go through the roof. And then I tell them, they read a book and go, wait a minute, this gets cheaper as you get older. Wait a minute, you're self-insuring. Mr. Andrew, 30 years down the road, the cost of insurance cost 1/20th what it did when he was 30 years younger. And people go, what? I've never seen one do that. And so they think that because they haven't seen it, that it doesn't exist. Sometimes I just simply reply, really? You're using logic because you've never seen an insurance policy that does that it doesn't exist? Have you ever seen your brain? How do you know that exists? It's so funny how people use reasoning like that. Number 8, isn't it only for the wealthy? No. In fact, this is how many of the wealthy got wealthy. Yes, the wealthy use this because they can't participate in a Roth or something like that, but it's not just for the wealthy. This is for everybody. You can sock away $500 a month, $1,000 a month. You can put in $1 million, $10 million. When our children were born, we started out putting $25 a month into their own indexed universal life policies. And it insured them for over $250,000, and we just put in $25 a month. And then when they got money for delivering newspapers, mowing lawns, they put money in there, and they ended up with $200,000 or $300,000 by the time they were ready to go to college. They didn't have to use it for college. But no, it's not just for the wealthy. Number 9, hardly anyone is doing this, right? Well, not in our circles. There are hundreds of thousands. In fact, indexed universal life insurance is the #1 growing financial product in America. People are putting money in those, and it's growing, and money going to other investments or whole life insurance is going down. Indexed universal life is going through the roof. So it's pretty obvious based upon those studies. The last reason, if it's so good, why don't you call it an investment? Now, you better know how to answer that one by now. If we call it an investment, then that means it moves over to a different part of the code that's going to be taxable sooner or later and usually have market volatility. No, it's not an investment. It's an insurance policy, and it's maximum funded, and it's tax-free. And so it's that cut and dried, and we explain it in the book. So take the opportunity to read through those various reasons, because you will be asked those questions, and I don't want you to sit there and go, I'll get back to you. No, you ought to be able to tell them in the way just like I do in the book. So let me just tell you one of my favorite quotes. It goes like this. The worst form of ignorance is when we reject something we know very little or nothing about. Did you hear that? The worst form of ignorance is when we reject something that we know very little about, okay? Now, this is true with this. When people reject it and they don't even know anything about it, that's pretty sad. They want to continue to live in ignorance. So when people say, well, golly, who is doing this? I have quotes like this from the New York Times. An insider's secret for the affluent. A legal way to invest without paying taxes on the gains. Okay, that was clear back in 2011 in the New York Times. In fact, it says tax-free life insurance, an untapped investment for the affluent. Is it just for the affluent? No, but this is where the affluent put their money. Now, we look at wealthy people who have used this. So sometimes if you need credibility, just say, well, Walt Disney. What do you think about Walt Disney? Yeah, he went broke 7 times and had a nervous breakdown before he made it. And he actually, I admire him because he took one of his biggest fears. Do you know he was afraid of mice? He took one of his biggest fears and he told his brother Roy, hey, I have an idea. I want to make a mouse look friendly in a cartoon. His brother said, that'll never work. No, Mickey Mouse has been the #1 entertainer in America for 70 years, a recession-proof mouse. Well, Disney could think out of the box. Do you know, after failing in the pursuit of traditional means of financing to build what would become Disneyland, do you know what created Disneyland? How he continued with his dream? He was able to use cash value out of his life insurance policies to continue with his dream to develop Disneyland. We wouldn't have Disneyland if it wasn't for life insurance cash value. You talk about Ray Kroc with McDonald's. He borrowed money from 2 cash value life insurance policies to help cover the salaries of key employees. He also used some of the money to create and advertise with the campaign the emerging mascot Ronald McDonald. Maybe we wouldn't have Ronald McDonald or McDonald's today if it wasn't for cash value life insurance. You talk about J.C. Penney. Same thing. If he didn't have, in the Great Depression, his life insurance policies, because they were secure when banks were going under and everything else, he used his life insurance to stay afloat because of the safety and the liquidity during the Great Depression. So you have a lot of examples, but I like this guy. If you don't know who this is David Walker. He was the U.S. former Comptroller General, and he was actually in office when the Obama administration came in. And in 2008, when we were on the brink of financial collapse in this country, he wanted to tell the American public the truth, how serious it was, so that people wouldn't be blindsided. And they refused to let him tell the truth, so he resigned. Do you know what he did after he resigned? He went out because he knew how serious the economy could get. And he began to be a guest speaker throughout America, and he said, do you know where I have my money for safety in case of a total, financial collapse, a run on the bank? In life insurance. And he loves indexed universal life insurance. He has spoken for our audiences many times, but who would know better? He said, this is where I put my serious cash in case everything starts to implode. So when you study these savvy, smart people who we revere as so successful, you'll find they have a common denominator. They keep their money into vehicles that are liquid, safe, and predictable rates of return and that are tax-free. What is that? Life insurance that's been maximum funded to be able to access that cash value for living benefits, not just the death benefit.